You're listening to Nightmare on Film Street. The current time is 6:66. Traffic is clear ahead from here to the afterlife, but it's hell outside. For the next hour, you're on Nightmare time. So, let's give a grave welcome to our hosts, John and Kim.
Hello again, fiends, and welcome back to Nightmare on Film Street, the horror movie podcast for the casually obsessed. I'm John.
I'm Kim.
And we are closing out a double bill of live stream horrors, live broadcast horrors, with 1998's The Last Broadcast. Last week we talked about Late Night with the Devil, and we're pretty much always 5 minutes away from talking about the Blair Witch Project, which we're going to try real hard not to bring up every other sentence while talking about this movie. It is, if you remember in our interview with Eduardo Sanchez and Michael C. Williams, they talked about it. I mean, hell, if you were alive at the end of the 90s, you'll know this movie came out before the Blair Witch Project and is pretty much always in the conversation when you talk about
Blair Witch Project
stuff.
got all the glory, and Last Broadcast kind of skirted in, a little unknown. I would say that The Last Broadcast is the Black Christmas to Halloween when everybody's talking about, like, the first slasher ever. Unfortunately, Black Christmas doesn't get its due. The Last Broadcast is arguably one of the first found footage films and really plays with the technique way more than I was anticipating. I will say this was a first-time watch for both of us.
Yeah.
It had skirted off both of our radars, especially being found footage fans. Every year or so, I put out a list on the website of, like, the best found footage movies or the found footage films that suspend your disbelief the most. And I always get some pushback for not having Last Broadcast on the list. And so finally I was like, John, we have to watch Last Broadcast and we have to do it on the podcast because apparently everybody wants us to see it. And we're finally checking it off the list.
Yeah, as found footage completists, we're here.
We've done it. We did the thing.
There are 5 more movies we gotta watch, and then we've seen them all. Okay, Last Broadcast is likely not a super familiar title for most people. If you out there listening to this have never heard of this movie before, it's similar to the Blair Witch Project, except we're swapping out the Blair Witch for the Jersey Devil. We follow a crew of people that are going in for a interesting wrinkle, but a live broadcast in the woods for a public access TV show that has sort of looped in the internet into their program. They all die. Everybody but one guy, everybody but the one weird guy that no one was sure about dies or is missing. He, of course, gets convicted of the murders, and now we are following a documentary filmmaker who's like cracking open a cold case. It just doesn't feel like we've solved the mystery entirely. I'm going to get to the bottom of what happened out in the Pine Barrens.
I mean, that's a pretty good synopsis.
That's the movie.
Okay, so let's do 3 good things for anybody who hasn't seen The Last Broadcast, has no idea what it is, and is like, should I watch it before I listen to this, before I get it spoiled for me? What would you say is your first good thing?
I mean, first good thing, this is a real slice of mid-90s indie filmmaking.
Yeah, so much plaid.
So much plaid, so much overwrought dialogue, talking about the existential implications of the art form.
The Gen Xers listening to this are really mad at you right now.
These are the people that are totally fine with the ending of Reality Bites. Meanwhile, everybody in the modern world's just like, she should have picked Ben Stiller. But anyway, there's an authenticity to the Gen X quality of this movie. Also, in terms of being a slice of the 90s, this is a time where the internet is still incredibly brand new, and they're folding it into the story. Like, guaranteed, people who watch this in 1998, this is like the first time that they've seen the internet used. I think they do a really interesting job of trying to do a simulcast on the internet while also doing a public broadcast on public access. It's always nice to see old web pages. It really is all it is. Goddamn, websites used to be so cool.
So I'm going to blend my point 2 in your point 1 because I think that deserves kind of second credit, is just how technologically ahead of its time this movie is. The fact that they're live streaming and they're live chatting and they're broadcasting live. It's even stuff that we're still mastering today, like the live stream and the Twitch streams and the live chatting and like responding to people live on video. That's a novel found footage technique today. Like we've had Deadstream recently. The live stream broadcast is kind of a new outlet for the found footage film, and the fact that this early found footage film, when half of people had the internet and knew what a chat room was, they're already using it in the way they're telling this story is just so novel.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit of a nostalgic good thing, but it is crazy to see people who understood the implications of this technology and what it could do.
You can make people go to the woods and murder them.
Yeah.
All you have to do is anonymously suggest something in a chatbot.
And I don't know how to formulate good thing number 3 beyond just saying, like, great found footage cinematography. Every found footage movie, whether they know it or not, has to do something interesting with the camera. Like, this is like almost an unspoken rule. Like, you have to do something new with the found footage aspect that nobody else has done. And sometimes it's just in how a scare is presented, how it's edited. There are great sequences in this movie where we are watching recovered footage from a damaged VHS tape.
So good.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk about it because it's my favorite thing of the movie.
Little chunks like that where we're seeing fragments of a scare sequence. Genius. Absolute genius. It's the 1998 found footage version of the Jaws technique where you can't really show your monster because, I don't know if you know this, I just found out this movie had a budget of $900.
Wow. Okay, but that's gotta be like they bought one camera for the movie. Surely that's not including them making sandwiches in the back of their van.
So, oddly enough, the Wikipedia entry has a bit of a breakdown on how the budget folded. Yeah, no, it's nuts. This film was made on a budget of $900, edited on a desktop computer using Adobe Premiere 4.2. $600 was allocated for the production, which obviously includes snacks. I don't think anybody actually got paid. I think this is just a whole bunch of people.
Well, with $900, nobody got paid.
Nobody got paid. I mean, it's 1998. That's practically $5 million today. 240 were utilized for digital video stock, and 20 hours of tape for $12 each.
Wow.
Yeah. Weird. There's more of a production breakdown for this $900 movie than there is for multi-million-dollar movies.
They have a pretty big cast. There's a lot of talking heads in this movie.
Yeah.
We interview like ex-police officers, people associated with the killer, people associated with the TV show. There's quite a few different, I would say, large talking roles.
Yeah, news broadcasts.
So
everything.
they got a lot of friends who are willing to work for free.
I was going to say, and every single one of them, a friend of the filmmakers. A lot of family members in this movie, I'm sure. Those are just 3 good things. I mean, honestly, it's always nice to discover a new found footage movie. Like, the overlying good thing is, this is a found footage movie. Sold, sight unseen. We want to watch it. It's been a long time. We've been meaning to cross it off the list. We finally checked it out. Here's the trailer for the last broadcast, and when we get back, we're going to dive deep on this faux documentary, cold case, possibly supernatural horror.
I'd come to this project with many of the same assumptions that you have concerning the Jersey Devil murders and the guilt of Jim Seward. His characterization as a troubled young man responsible for a spree of horrific, ritualistic homicides. What really happened that night? And is Jim Seward truly responsible?
Most people, when they commit a crime, aren't being videotaped, like, when they're doing it, or like near the time when they're doing it. It was like spying in on this crime about to happen.
No one else had the opportunity to commit those murders except for Mr. Jim Seward.
I feel weird about it.
Yeah, I know, me too.
This whole idea to come out into the woods and stuff.
Suddenly they want to jump into doing, big time live, from the Pine Barrens and have radio and internet and this and that. And, I knew it was going to be a fiasco. I didn't really think it was going to end up like it did, but I knew it wasn't going to look pretty.
the attacker was using both hands with two weapons and was ambidextrous.
Two separate instruments were driven into the victims at the same time.
I think to anybody, if you found 47 pieces of a human being or human beings, it would be very disturbing.
The whole thing reeks of a setup. More went down than we know.
Jim's an innocent man, and this was not investigated in any way, shape, or form.
The one thing about this with, this guy Jim, the case they built up against him, it was all circumstantial. They didn't have any actual evidence that he did this, but, he was the only one there.
Also, if he's an innocent man, there's a killer on the loose.
As they said on Fact or Fiction, you decide.
The Last Broadcast, currently sitting at a 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 2.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Wow. It's all the glory went to the Blair Witch Project. People didn't save any ratings for the Last Broadcast.
So when you think about the Blair Witch Project, they make so many choices that are counterintuitive and things that you would never... they break so many rules in that movie. And I had to wonder while watching the Last Broadcast whether or not they had thought about making basically the Blair Witch Project, but they were worried that it would be too arty, like it'd be too hard to sell.
Like it didn't have enough.
Yeah. I wonder if a lot of the decisions in this movie were made because they were worried about people's reactions to just watching three people get lost in the woods, basically.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, like I can only imagine having never made a movie like this before.
And there isn't really a reference point. Like the Lost in the Woods movie, these were the first people making them.
Yeah, I can only assume that they wanted to make something closer to the Blair Witch Project, but they were worried that it'd be too hard to sell, so they built a documentary-style film around it.
Yeah, and I have a love and hate relationship with the true crime aspect of it. I am able to fall into it, I think, easier because it does have a level of realism to it when you're talking to different people who are divulging like the history of the case and the format and the layout. Maybe just because I do watch a lot of true crime documentaries. This very much gave me like West Memphis 3 vibes. I felt like I was going back into a 90s murder case that had very mysterious elements to it. My disbelief was easily suspended.
That's so funny. Like the comparison to Paradise Lost is apt, to use my Gen X vocabulary.
Stop shitting on Gen X.
Okay, no, all I'm saying is it's like the same film stock. These movies look the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like the inverting color, we're going through the forest. Like it had that funny 90s sensationalism to it, which nowadays is kind of gratuitous. Like they were really showing those bodies and like flashing on them and stuff. And it's just like, guys, this is a little bit in poor taste.
I think especially if you're trying to sell this as this is a real crime scene we're looking at, that's a dead body you just showed us.
But when we get to the ending, it'll make a whole lot more sense.
Yeah. They present this movie like Antrim, that movie that came out a couple years
Which is
ago.
a deep cut. I don't know if a lot of people have seen Antrim.
We've covered it on the podcast. It was a viral sensation on TikTok. People have seen Antrim, baby. But the whole idea that we are building, like, oh, you don't know what's going to happen on these videotapes. Oh, we're going to watch them soon. But first, you got to hear the backstory. It's so crazy.
I do love it, though, because as much as I'm like, just show me the tape,
well, yeah, that's the emotion they want. They want you to be, like, hungry for it.
The suspense building of getting a mysterious tape mailed to them that's just the tape. It's not rolled. It's not in a VHS.
Loose fucking tape?
Yeah, and they have to get a forensic tape restorer to slowly and meticulously work through it, and we're watching the footage she's able to clip to us. And so we're watching it in backwards order, in a weird order. We're watching, like the beginning of the tape, the end of the tape, this scene that she freed for us, this scene that she cleared up. So it feels like an in live time investigation.
Yeah, we should probably say, too, that as they're explaining who the characters are in this story and the evidence we have, there's a moment where they replace the tapes in the cameras, and that's the last known footage we have. We don't know whether or not they actually replaced the tape, if something happened before that, or if there's tape out there that's just never been discovered.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't actually have footage of what happened to these people. It's just like the Dyatlov Pass incident. Everything was going hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden there was no sign of life from them, and they wound up dead, horribly mutilated, brutally killed, some of them missing. It's just a horrific scene.
And one guy walked out of the woods in a bit of a fugue state.
Of course, the one guy who's the psychic of the group and is maybe a little mentally unstable, like his landlady.
A little antisocial,
Yeah.
bit of an outcast, yeah.
The obvious choice for a murder like this, especially in a time like the Paradise Lost killings.
Yeah, the easiest choice, and definitely kind of spotlights how once cops get something in their head, they're finding evidence that'll plug into the story that they have for the crime and not the other way around.
There was so much of an emphasis on like, he likes magic and he likes the internet. We can't be trusted. He's clearly our killer.
Well, they didn't understand the internet, so it's just like, this antisocial guy was just on his laptop in the tent until 4 a.m, and you're like, yeah, that checks out.
Well, okay. In 2024, that makes sense to be on your laptop or on your phone in a tent. In 1998, this guy's got internet in the woods? That's weird. That's strange.
I mean, they were doing a live broadcast, which is something that's really downplayed in, a movie called The Last Broadcast, and the motivations of the 4 guys going out into the woods. So, yeah, they get a tip about the Jersey Devil. They're trying to, again, Late Night with the Devil, trying to save their show by doing something different and out there. So they're going to do kind of like a live investigation, which is all supernatural YouTube is nowadays. So it's another thing that they just had like nose to the wind of what was coming.
Born too soon.
Unfortunately, because we're watching this through a true crime documentary lens, we don't get any of the broadcast.
So little of it. There's one chunk where they're like, hey, everybody, we're live in the forest and on the internet. And then it's unclear to me whether or not it's supposed to be fully live, nonstop, 24/7. Which, if that's the case, okay, we've got some missing tape, but didn't they broadcast it live to the internet?
I know, and
can we interview somebody who saw the broadcast?
We see them recording some ads, but we don't really see any of the Jersey Devil investigation and like why they brought a psychic and they brought a paranormal sound guy, and like we didn't really use either of them to like a spooky advantage.
At first, I thought
I wanted Jersey Devil content.
There's a serious Jersey Devil hole cut in the middle of this movie, but I had assumed maybe they were filming the content and that they were going to broadcast it on public access
Fake
TV.
live?
Yeah, and the internet at the same time. But that falls apart when you remember that they have an actual internet hookup in the fucking campsite.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing everything around the broadcast. Like, that's all non-ambiguous, I guess, because they're all on camera at that point and everybody's getting along, so it's not important to the murder investigation.
It's gotta be it.
But I honestly think it's just because the film is trying to do so much that the story of what goes down in the forest, unfortunately, we only see snapshots of it. What I would have loved was just to watch the cameras and see what unfolds, but you kind of lose a bit of the suspense and how they want to divulge that information.
Yeah, and if this was a real story, this is how you'd experience it. You would just hear about a TV crew that went into the woods and died, and there was one survivor, and then he got accused, and we're only hearing snippets of evidence through the news and what they're allowing to get out through the court trial. Like, you would never get a full picture of the whole story. You might become invested in the story enough to become like the documentary filmmaker who's essentially putting what we're watching together. There's lots of little bits of him talking directly to the camera. He's doing a lot of the narration.
And he's so dramatic.
Very dry synopsis of what happened in the Pine Barrens. Like, he makes some choices, but also maybe devoid of personality himself. It all comes into play. And also, like, I definitely want to talk about that scene where we get the whole box full of videotape
It's
later
funny
on.
because in the beginning of the movie, I was just like, there's too much of this documentary filmmaker in this movie. And that's my argument every single time I watch a documentarian. And they're like, I went on this personal journey to discover this is much bigger than me, but I'm going to include my personal story so that you have to watch my narcissism for a little bit while I tell something that you're way more interested interested in. But I'm going
Right.
to talk about myself
It's,
first.
it's like how you have to read a story about the first time your mother took you to Taiwan to get to the recipe for fucking pancakes. Just give me the recipe. I don't need 1,000 words on some memory you have. I just want to know how to make good pancakes. And that jump to recipe button is getting looser and looser every time. So the filmmaker has, David, the filmmaker, the person narrating the movie, has as much information at the beginning as any of the general public has. But he's just a little suspicious that maybe the cops went a little too hard on Jim, the only survivor of the attack.
And I think it's because they didn't have a whole ton of evidence. He was convicted on the fact that, one, he was the only one that walked out of the woods, and that he had 3 dots of blood on his shirt from all of the missing and dead gentlemen.
Yeah, and there is proof that he was in internet chat rooms all night talking with people, but there was a 45-minute gap between him replying to some people. So if he was a really fast runner, would have had enough time to go exactly where these people are in the woods, murder them brutally, come back, type on the keyboard.
I don't know if like my faith in the internet chat being a good enough timestamp to be an alibi.
In 1998?
Yeah, because he's using the woods. They probably have some shitty kind of dial-up mobile connection.
What if there was a cloud?
They're using a car phone. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have trust in that being an alibi alone.
That's the cornerstone of
and
the case.
And it is. It's the cornerstone of the case, but it's also the cornerstone of disproving that he's the killer in the film. So I'm just like, I didn't buy this on both ends.
Yeah. And in the middle of the movie, the filmmaker gets that box of tape delivered to him, loose, no cassette. He has to bring it to somebody who's getting restored. And then, like, as he's giving us info about what happened at the campsite and, like, where bodies were found and speculation on what happened and why they are in the condition they're in.
Also gratuitously flashing images of the bodies as they found them. One of the shots is really haunting.
Yes.
I'm not sure which corpse it is. One of the corpses has, like, the red eye flash from being taken with a 90s camera. And the eye is, like, white and blown out, really bright. Fucking scared me.
Yeah.
Like, got under my skin, willy-nillys. I heard a sound somewhere in the house, and I made John go investigate it.
I was going to bring this up. Kim heard a fucking noise, and she's like, that was the door. Somebody's in the house.
I did not say that. I did not. And also, it was thunder and lightning out, so the mood was set, John.
Yeah, no.
I heard a door sound.
The mood was set. It was definitely the oven clicking, because it was like, oh, got to bring the temperature back up if you want to eat this reheated pizza.
It sounded like a door.
We also have a light outside that's on a dongle, so I can control it from my phone. And when the wind picks up, it sort of like flaps and hits the siding on the outside of the house, and it just sounds like somebody's outside punching the wall. It freaks the dogs out. It freaks Kim out.
Well,
freaks me out, but I gotta go deal with it.
We watch nothing but horror movies in the dark, in the woods where we live.
Right.
I am on edge a lot.
There's no one around. The cops definitely aren't coming in time.
So needless to say, John has to investigate a lot of sounds when we watch movies.
Yeah, gotta investigate a lot of sounds, gotta get rid of a lot of spiders. You know how it is. Which is to say, the movie did a pretty good job of building a scary atmosphere, right? And it's all in what you don't see. This moment came around the time that we were starting to see some of the footage of that missing tape, which is clearly what it turns out to be, like this loose tape we've gotten. The VHS analyst, the specialist who's recovering this footage, is showing us bits and pieces, and we're seeing just like pleasant, funny conversations, people making fun of each other in the tent, people going out looking for Stephen, one of the filmmakers who went for a wander by himself but hasn't come back.
And they found his lamp.
Yeah, and they also, on camera, they mentioned the time. Like, oh, man, what time is it? Oh, it's 2:45, which becomes a bit of a point for evidence to prove that Jim maybe didn't commit these crimes.
And the prosecutor's timeline is wrong because they were supposed to be in the midst of being murdered in those moments.
Exactly, yeah. And they're hearing something strange. They've got 2 cameras going, and we find out that the footage we're seeing is actually spliced from both cameras, or at least that there's 2 sets of film that are just sort of like loosely packed in this box, like packing peanuts or Excelsior. Meanwhile, the filmmaker has gone back to the campsite. He's doing like a bit of a reenactment. He's filming some narration. Right here is where they found his body. point to the ground. There's a lot of...
It was in a clearing much like this one, that the 3 bodies were humans and they camped.
We're making fun of it, but in the moment, it's really static. It's really slow.
It's scary.
There's lots of background stuff, and you're like, somebody's gonna fucking jump out and hit this guy in the head with a machete.
Yeah, it's a crime that we now know is unsolved. One guy is in jail and died in prison who was tried with the crime. Two guys died, and then there was one guy that's missing. So you're like, okay, well, is he the killer?
Maybe he did it.
Is he going to run out and hit this documentarian on the head?
Yeah. And while he's out there, he gets a phone call from the VHS specialist who's basically just like, okay, I've got this image of a face. I'm being able to enhance the image. I'm recovering it. And it's finally visible who this person is. Like, maybe we've captured a photograph of the killer. And so the documentarian races back. They've decided that he's going to record the reaction from the two of them seeing this face for the first time, and then they agree that they're going to call the police afterward. They're doing more due diligence here in terms of getting the evidence to the police than maybe Jarecki did with the Jinx documentary. Who's to say?
That's something that they didn't get right about the modern day, is just that everything is going on TikTok, whether it's ethical or not. If you're witnessing a crime, your phone camera is going up.
Yeah, you're not calling the cops. You're just yelling World Star and filming it. Okay, so he gets to her office, and the face is slowly dissolving, and it's him! Oh my god! What? This doesn't make any sense!
Okay, so all of the men in this movie look a little bit like each other, except for the one guy that's bald, and has gone missing and is not a player in play.
2 minutes into this movie, Kim was just like, I don't know who anybody is.
I don't know which one. I'm like, which one's the killer?
Yeah, it's like they all should have just been wearing primary colors, so you could have just been like, the blue guy did it!
Yeah, so when the image is revealed, all of a sudden the documentarian that we're following is a bad guy, and I'm like, oh, I guess it was him.
So honestly, I had the same problem because I was like, oh, it's the guy who went missing. I thought it was the other guy. We both thought it was different people. Because they just had that standard 90s face.
Were you as disappointed as I was that it wasn't a Jersey Devil?
Yeah, obviously.
I wanted it to be a creature.
I wanted it to be a creature so bad.
Yeah. They didn't focus enough on the fact or fiction TV show that they were filming.
That was the other thing, right? Show me more of that show.
Yeah, and we needed more lore for it to be something paranormal or supernatural at the end. They didn't talk about the Jersey Devil at all.
I think... Was there just so much Jersey Devil hype in the 90s that they were like, people understand.
Everybody knows who the
know who the Jersey Devil is, yeah.
And I was just like, give me the Jersey lore.
I just want it, yeah. Just give me... I could have watched 10 episodes.
We needed Heather standing at Coffin Rock moments from the last broadcast.
The finale of the movie is interesting, too, because he kills this VHS specialist.
And we break from found footage entirely.
It's a complete cinematic moment. Right? It's a completely different aspect
We're still
ratio.
the quality of found footage, but we're an omnipotent camera.
Which, I'll say, the only other time that's used in this movie is when we show the filmmaker opening the box with that film stock in it.
Oh.
That's also a cinematic moment. Because obviously nobody's there to record it. And, like, you buy it in
I
the
just
moment.
assumed he put his camera on the coffee table.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's got, like, a smooth motion to it. Like, we're in an actual movie at that point. And he starts delivering more narration and more talking head stuff in the room where he's killed this girl. She's actually not even dead yet. This woman is like, at his feet, wrapped in plastic, still writhing around.
The plastic kill is pretty gnarly. It's all done on screen. It's very Poughkeepsie tapes.
Yeah.
If you like fucking being creeped out by fictional killers who make it feel like they're real killers, they had a lot in common in those moments.
Yeah, that's the real, I don't know if I want to say charm, but that's what makes some of these early found footage movies work, is that they just, because the quality is so low, you're like, this could be real.
You're like, I don't like this.
I don't know.
Somebody who's into this is watching this and having a nice time, and that makes me feel worse about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is snuff porn for someone, and I don't dig it.
It's hard to strike that balance, right? Because now movies are too produced and they look too fake. But also, if they look too real, you're like, I don't know about that.
I feel yucky.
Can we at least have like a painted background set or something? We need something to latch onto to tell us that this is fake. Which, I mean, makes the ending effective. We find out, obviously, that the documentarian is the person. I mean, I've said it already, but like he's clearly the person that killed them in the woods. Obviously, he knows that Jim didn't commit the crime. He clearly owned that videotape and gave it to the woman and pretended somebody delivered it to him. So it's a real narcissistic move of him to do this. Like, who's he making this film for? Himself, right?
Is it for him to watch late at night being like, I solved the crime. It was me.
I don't know if he's saying I solved the crime versus I got away with it.
Yeah, it is really weird. It plays into the fact that it felt like a super narcissistic setup. You're like, wow, he's really involving himself in the case. Like,
right?
It would make sense if he was like the son of maybe the cop that prosecuted him, and then they had a rift because he never believed he was the killer. But he's not, I mean, you think, not involved in this case at all. He's just a curious bystander who was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this and make this about me.
Yeah, because ultimately it is about him. He is the guy that killed them. We also learned that the reason they've gone into the woods is because somebody on the internet, because they started doing like a call-in. The way public access TV shows would have a call-in number that you could dial in and talk with the hosts live on TV. They started doing a similar thing where you could message them through the internet, and a mysterious person named D was like, y'all ever heard of the Jersey Ghost? I think you should go investigate the Jersey Ghost in exactly these coordinates, maybe, possibly around this time of year.
That wasn't it at all.
No, that wasn't it at all.
It was just somebody being like, hey, have you heard of the Jersey Devil?
Yeah. Oh, I kept saying the Jersey Ghost. That's okay. There's some discussion in the middle of the movie that, like, maybe D is the person responsible for some of this, and he got them out into the woods and did something untoward.
He didn't make their show fail so that they had to do something crazy like go out there in the middle of the night.
Right? No, he wasn't involved in that sense. But I think by the end of the movie, we're supposed to assume that the director was D, right?
Yeah.
Well, also his name's David. It's got to be him. So yeah, it was the mastermind plan all along.
So the ending for me is a little bit of a deflated balloon.
Yeah.
They're building up so much suspense, and we're going to see who the killer is, and it is I will give the ending credit for being really original and for breaking the format and for doing something super ballsy and trying to give you that like surprise rug pull at the end. Mm-hmm. But for a movie that's trying to solve a crime, the one thing they never give us is a motive.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of really important to me.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
I guess he's a psychopath because he killed these people in the woods, and now he's just making a movie about it because everybody got it wrong.
It's the best way, easiest way for him to return to the scene of the crime.
Oh, true.
Yeah. Relive it. This is his like keepsake token. I mean, like it sounds like he's had tapes for a while that he could watch where that he's clearly on there murdering them. But this is, I guess, just another way for him to relive it without committing more murder, other than that one woman he kills.
Okay, so how do you feel about the ending?
I mean, it's okay. I do wish we had some Jersey Devil stuff.
I wish we had just done the broadcast and stuff a little more. I understand why it wasn't a Jersey Devil, like we didn't go into Supernatural at the end, because this was trying to be more of a crime type of film. It wasn't as fantastical as you'd expect it to be for following a bunch of guys in the woods who are going to investigate supernatural stuff. Like, we really don't touch on supernatural content at all.
No. If it were me, I would have had him get killed by the Jersey Devil while revisiting the crime scene in the woods. And at the same time, we've got some mysterious videotape. And then the VHS analyst is the person who ultimately reveals to us that he was the killer. So, like, he gets a bit of comeuppance. Like,
that's too much, John. That's way too much.
This movie is already too much.
Also, too, the fact that we don't fully find out what happened to Steven is another bother because it's brought up
because we got the one guy who's got the answers, right?
Yeah, it's brought up so many times, like, maybe he should have just revealed to us where the body was, like when he was doing the crime recreation.
And this is where Stephen was buried, I think.
But maybe that's kind of what's supposed to make it more grounded in reality, because with true crime, you never get all the answers, even if you get most of the answers.
Sometimes I say that about some movies too.
But you do have the benefit of fiction of being able to not do that.
Yeah, and I just don't love how much it breaks the found footage format. Like, I don't think it earns it. I don't think... Like in a way that like
in the finale.
Yeah, like Late Night with the
It
Devil.
does feel weird when we do it, like when we're standing in the woods and we're zooming out and he's holding the camera up, and it's a nice vignette of him recording fake footage for us with a body underneath his arm. But yeah, you're just like, I want to be back in that nice, safe found footage space.
Yeah.
I would have been happy to end in there.
Late Night with the Devil tries to sort of build some framework for why they sort of escape the found footage.
Because we're playing with reality and we're in a hallucinatory state and the devil's running willy-nilly all over the studio. Like we don't know what's real and what's fake.
But with this one, it seems more...
We've just stepped away from the format.
Yeah, like maybe they were worried that people would not buy a whole 100% found footage movie, that at the end of it we needed something cinematic. Or they just didn't, I don't know, maybe they just wanted to do it that way, or they were worried about trying to shoot some of those images where we can see that he's hiding a dead body while doing the finale of his own documentary.
Yeah, and the end of the movie is almost him... He's recording out of sequence. He pretends that he's gotten the call to see the tape after he's already gone to see the tape and killed the documentarian. And he's out in the woods burying her body. And he's like, oh, I'm recreating the scene and I'm waiting for a call for the final reveal.
Yeah, it's like, what are we actually watching here? The whole movie is his documentary, except for these moments. It just doesn't quite mesh together in the end.
Yeah.
But like, really good on them for doing something completely original and different and doing it for $900.
Yeah, because like I don't agree with the ending, but I appreciate the choices. That's a ballsy move. I don't know if it landed for me, but maybe that's just my own personal taste. I want some Jersey Devil.
Kim's a found footage purist for sure. I am also, but between the two of us, Kim's a hardline purist when it comes to found footage. And so, as the foremost found footage expert on the podcast, how do you rate The Last Broadcast?
It's hard.
You've also had it hyped in your mind, I assume, for a little while.
No, I was trying to go into it without any expectations, and I made purposeful. Every time it was mentioned to me, I was like, oh, I haven't seen this. So I made purposeful attempts. Like, I didn't know anything about it going into it. And I honestly didn't know it was going to be such a good pairing for Late Night with the Devil.
It really
terms
worked
of
out
like
pretty well.
themes and concepts. Like, they both break the found footage wall at the end. They're both about failing TV shows who are trying to do one more paranormal hoorah. Yeah, so really fun. And also doing a really early found footage with a modern found footage and seeing how it has changed and how it hasn't. I loved the setup and the suspense building in the movie. I think that's where it was most successful. It did a really great job getting you interested in what information was coming next, and that was really artfully done. I don't know if I've ever been so invested in the story of a found footage movie as I was in this one. Like, even Blair Witch Project, I love the Blair Witch Project, but a lot of that hinges on performances, and the story itself is less important. Like, I love the Blair Witch lore, and that's so good because you don't know what's true and what's not, and so you just want all of the stories. You know what I mean? You're not following a single through line. With this, I wanted the crime solved.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what was on the tape.
Which you did not get.
But they did a really, like, same as with Late Night with the Devil. 90% of the film was 100% for me. They did a really great job navigating the mediums they had chosen. I don't know if I would have gone full documentary. I might have gone more of the live broadcast, but that's just the story I wanted to see.
Yeah, no, the documentary makes sense for the time too. Like, it's the easiest way to sort of explain the footage and everything.
And they weren't telling a crime story. They weren't telling the story of a failing television series.
Yeah.
Even if that's what I wanted.
And your rating?
3.25 out of 4.
Wow. I think I'm a 2.5. Maybe a 2.
You really didn't like the ending.
Yeah, I didn't love the ending. The found footage always hinges on the performances.
The performances were a little... They worked for free, John.
I know. And like, I've tried to keep that in mind. A lot of aspiring people doing a lot of inspiring work here in this movie. I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 4.
You're being such a sassy mean girl.
So I didn't love it. I'm sorry. There were parts of this movie where I was just like, goddamn, we are firing on all cylinders. You are doing some exceptional work here.
Didn't you love
This is why I love found footage.
Didn't you love the archivist? Like, with her going through the tape footage and how they revealed all that?
Yeah, I love all
As soon as we got there, I was like, wow, this is a 4 out of 4 movie for me. And I didn't love that we didn't get any Jersey Devil.
That sequence was a 4 out of 4.
And then the ending was...
Other sequences are not 4 out of 4. That is all I'm saying. And then average overall, 2.5 out of 4.
Yeah, I will say the Blair Witch being the film of this era to get the hype was correct.
Yes.
Last Broadcast is playing in the medium, I think, more than the Blair Witch Project does. It's doing a lot of different found footage techniques that aren't really utilized until later in the creation of the subgenre, like the news broadcasts and the crime case and the documentary style. Like, that's all different. Fucking Blair Witch Project is just an anomaly of perfection.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the two of them together anyway, just given that they didn't know about each other's productions.
Yeah.
It's just it was in the air, there was something in the water, it was like the right time.
The universe was like, we need to start using these shitty digital cameras.
Yeah, the artists were making all the choices and just...
The internet is coming. We need to market things weirdly.
Basically. So it was a really fun first-time watch for the both of us. Always like a new found footage movie. And if you're a big fan of The Last Broadcast, we'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
And if you have like additional theories on things, like if there's stuff that we missed, like more about what happened to Stephen, I would like to know.
Hit us up in the Nightmare on Film Street Discord at nofspodcast.com/Discord. Share your theories with us. Share your favorite found footage picks. We'd love to hear from you.
If you want more Nightmare on Film Street content, consider joining our Fiend Club on Patreon. There's tons of bonus episodes. We have monthly watch parties. We have a private section of the Discord where we chat. You can get all of that at nofspodcast.com/Fiend Club.
That's going to do it for us this week. This is closing out our live broadcast double feature, sort of a found footage double feature when we invite evil onto the airwaves. We'll be back again next week with a new set of movies. But until then, I'm John.
I'm Kim. Stay creepy.
It appears you made it out alive, but we'll get you next time. Help us to grow the horde. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. More terror can be found lurking on our website, nofspodcast.com. Until next time, stay creepy, fiends.